capable of deciding your own destiny. The question is, which path will you choose?
Star Trek is the 2009 reboot directed by JJ Abrams. It stars Chris Pine, Zachary Quinto, Zoe Saldana, and a slew of other cast members in this new Star Trek series. This reboot goes the alternate reality route, so there's some time traveling elements that causes this new cast of characters and this new timeline to form, so that this crew of the Enterprise can have different adventures than we see in the original movies. Now, I'm a huge Trekkie, but when I first watched this movie, I wasn't the biggest Trekkie. I love this movie as an action movie, but this movie doesn't hold up to scrutiny if you look deeply. First off, the cast is wonderful. Chris Pine as Kirk is pretty good, and Zachary Quinto as Spock is just perfect casting and perfect acting. He does it in a way that it's not a perfect... He does it in a way so it's not copying Leonard Nimoy, but it's truly Spock. Zoe Saldana as Uhura is basically the sassy modern-day version. Does a pretty good job. Anton Yelchin as Chekhov brings that humor in a similar way that the original Chekhov brought, and John Cho as Hikaru Sulu plays a slightly more serious version, but it still works for this reboot. With the original series, the main point of focus was the relationship between Spock and Kirk. And to get to see that in its origin phase, to see how they met, is wonderful. And the chemistry between Chris Pine and Zachary Quinto is great, and you believe in it in this new iteration. This movie is probably one of the best looking, most gorgeous sci-fi movies in like the last decade. Probably there's one or two other movies that you could say top it, but it's definitely like top 5 most gorgeous movies. I believe it's more visually gorgeous than the sequel Into Darkness, and even more gorgeous in some ways than The Force Awakens. And this movie is great, does a great job with pacing, and as an action movie. Like, once this movie starts, like, you got the bad guy ship that comes up, and it's just like boom, 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 action, action, action. And it gives you some time to breathe, but once it gives you some time to breathe, it goes back into the next action. And the action in this movie is so much fun and so epic that you watch it, it's so beautiful, and it keeps you on the edge of your seat. The score by Michael Giacchino is awe-inspiring. It's not copying the original, but it does its own thing. I highly recommend listening to the soundtrack. Enterprising Young Men is the theme of the new Star Trek reboot, and it's a wonderful theme. There's also a theme for Nero when the ship comes out, and it's a great theme. And the third act with the music is like epic. Like, you got the chorus and everything, and you feel the stakes, partially because of the music. So Michael Giacchino, great job. This movie has a lot of balls to change the lore of Star Trek. If you know what happens in the middle of the movie, I give them props for doing said action, because it is really ballsy. That being said, there are some other things they do when they refer to the original universe when a certain planet is gone. I don't like it because it screws up with the original lore and what they were leading up to with the previous TV shows and movies. Now, as much as I love this movie as an enjoyable ride and as a great action movie with decent characters, there are some problems with this movie. And one of the problems, yes, it doesn't feel like a Star Trek movie. But it is the first movie, so I will give this a pass. You have to give Star Trek to a new generation and a new audience, so that's fine. Unlike the sequel, which we'll get into later. The script is okay. The thing is, the script basically serves the action instead of the other way around if you want a compelling movie. That being said, the script is decent enough that it doesn't sink under the weight of its mediocre writing. This includes certain motivations by certain characters. Spock, on one hand, when he does some really crazy stuff, it just is not typical of an officer. And yes, it might have to do with the certain emotion things at the moment, but still, I don't believe Spock would go that far. Although I will say the biggest complaint people have with this movie in terms of character motivations is Nero, the main villain. I actually bought it because time travel does screw up with you, that it changes your mentality and it will make you crazy, so I bought it personally. I didn't have a problem with it. And Eric Bana was actually pretty menacing as a villain on his own rights, so I like it. My biggest problem with this movie is that there are too many coincidences needed to have the original characters brought together. And it does not stand up to scrutiny in basic logic and basic military logic. For example, you don't send cadets on a mission to man some ships. Starfleet, don't you have reserves? Like, come on, please. And the way Kirk is promoted to captain, the way he gets there is so... It defies any sense of logic. There's way too many coincidences to get Kirk to the way he is. And I can't buy it. Yes, I buy it in the sense that it doesn't tank the movie, but please, Roberto Orci and a couple other writers, you guys need to make a slightly more convincing way for these guys to gather together. It defies logic, defies coincidences, that I can't buy it. The romance between Uhura and Spock, I don't like it. There's no setup for it. They just start hitting on each other for some reason. And yeah, it's not great. Star Trek is a wonderful reboot. It got a lot of people interested into Star Trek. It appeals to a general audience with good action, great visuals, and a decent script that serves the action. I will give this movie an 8.5 out of 10. Had they smoothed out the script to get rid of a lot of the logistical holes in it, this movie would have been even better, maybe a 9 out of 10. That being said, I still love this movie. I can watch this multiple times because it's just so much fun. So Star Trek, have you seen it? What do you think about it? Let me know in the comments below, and I'll see you in the next review.